Good morning, y'all. Welcome to another Coffee with Connect. We get together every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 9:30. We get into God's Word. We have our coffee, and I hope the Force is strong with you today. As I've got my Darth Vader ceramic mug. I've used this one before, but thought it was just a good day to bust this one out. It just felt like a good Star Wars day. So does every day feels that way to me, quite frankly. But we're going to be in the book of Job today. We're going to go Old Testament, Job chapter 23. And really just two verses here. But Job chapter 23, verses 10 and 11, I'm going to be in the NLT. And we're going to pray, read, think, write, do. And we're going to look at this verse, but we need to look at it in context as well and how that applies to us and our framework of pray, read, think, write, do. I think can help us here. So if maybe you've only watched a couple of these, or maybe this is the first one that you've watched, this is our 5-step process. So I hope that you will pray before you watch the rest of this, or if you've already prayed, continue going on. And now after we've asked God to open our eyes and our minds and our hearts to what he has, let's read here. Job chapter 23, verses 10 through 11. But he knows where I am going, and when he tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. For I've stayed on God's paths, I've followed his ways, and not turned aside. And when I think about that verse, and when I think about Job, and I think about his story, and if you don't know Job's story, I would really encourage you to read it. But essentially, one of the wealthiest guys, probably the wealthiest guy to be living at the time, had everything ripped away from him, and literally everything, from his health to his family, to his possessions, all of it. Still stayed faithful to God. Wasn't necessarily happy about it all the time, but stayed faithful to God, and never looked really the other way. Never blamed God, even though people around him told him to. But I look at this verse, these two verses here. But he knows where I'm going, and when he tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. For I've stayed on God's paths, I've followed his ways and not turned aside. I feel like this is kind of a perspective goal for me, at least. Meaning, like, this is the mentality that I want to have, or strive to have, or should have, is this mentality that Job has here. The worst of situations happening in his life, yet this is his perspective. The Snickers commercial, life comes at you fast, as they like to say. But let's be honest, grabbing a Snickers doesn't always do the trick. It can, but for a moment, if the moment that's really got you down is, I guess, that you're hungry. But even if it did, it would only satisfy you for a while, not that long, quite frankly. And eventually you get hungry again, and what you thought would make the problem go away really only put it to the side for a time. And that's what we do. If you think about it, when situations happen in our life, a lot of times we grab a Snickers. Job had a ton of problems. As I said, he lost everything. He lost his family, lost everything he owned. His health, never died in this instance here, but lost sight of the he never lost sight of the fact. I'm sorry, we do, so a lot of times, but Job never lost sight of the fact that God was in control, and that God knew where all of this was going eventually, and why all of this was happening. So what about you? What's God saying to you through this? What is something that you can jot down and write down that maybe impacts you from just these couple of verses and from the story of Job? And what do you do with that? Well, in the end, if you read the rest of the story, God ended up blessing Job back 10 times more than what he had prior to. Our prayers and our cries in our times of need and our times of crisis do not fall on deaf ears. Sometimes it might feel that way. You might think that that's the case, but they don't. They don't fall on deaf ears. It's just that God's timing is better than ours. We just have to quit grabbing the candy bar of life that only delays the problem, and get to the real issue, and really trust God and give it over to the Lord. He is the only one that's going to make sense of the senseless, and give you hope when you feel hopeless. Life comes at you fast, as we all know, but God's word never fails. God's word never fails. So let's hold on to Jesus. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you'll like and subscribe and share this video. Join me again next time as we have our coffee and connect to Christ, community, purpose, and God's word together. See you.